Hey, welcome back, or I guess we should say we're back. It's the WoaS Podcast, episode 15. Today we're going to get into some new indie shit. I came across a playlist in my travels called Undercurrents. Jeremy and I get into this in terms of what is indie currently, what was it maybe in the past, through our very snarky and specific lenses of when we were at X point in time and had X taste in music. And then we kind of like bring it back to the current and talk about some of the artists that are part of the indie scene and what we think really works about that indie scene that's happening. So check it out. Yeah. So anyway, just based on some line of work I've been doing lately, I've been having a need for playlists to keep things rolling along. And so I've stumbled on a couple indie playlists. You know, indie used to irritate me years ago.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Why I say that. Let's start with why, and then we'll go into what. So why is just, I think, where I'm at now in my life, we're at in our lives as far as like anything creative oriented. Indie is always the underdog, the friend of the little guy kind of thing. So on paper, it all works, right? But when you're, let's say, in your 20s, mid-20s to mid-30s, and you're starting to get a little bit more sophisticated with your musical tastes, you know, assuming you're listening to quote-unquote good music, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that means. But, you know, like thoughtful, skilled...
Limp Bizkit. I get it.
Yeah, well-crafted stuff. So like a Jeff Buckley versus I don't want to say Limp Bizkit, but like Jeff Buckley versus, let's say at that period of time, Smash Mouth, and they weren't even around necessarily at the same time, but just for example.
Yeah, Walking on the Sun.
Yeah, which wasn't a bad opening effort, I have to say, despite...
No, my first CD ever was Smash Mouth, so
okay.
I'm not going to
yeah, right. I think you've already revealed that. Oof,
yeah.
That's
a
cross
tough one,
to bear, yeah.
But
at any rate, so like just, you know...
Shrek was big at the time in my defense.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So anyway, so just, you know, just say like that example I furnished is like, you know, a two ends of the spectrum kind of thing. Anyway, so like indie, let's just say anywhere from, let's say like 2000 to... you know, maybe 2010. And this just like in my life is where I would like form this opinion. There's just a lot of like overuse of reverb, the larger than life reverb, right? Where it doesn't matter how like shitty my guitar playing is or my voice is or whatever. And not even that in most cases it was bad. Just if it is, this is going to cover it up and make it larger than life. You know, in the same way that like you're playing something super mediocre on electric guitar clean and then you distort it and it's like, oh, now it's cool, the edge. You know what I mean? And so
or you put like a dotted eighth note delay on it.
Yeah, right, which inherently does kind of make it sound cooler, and we can all agree with that for the most part, especially during a solo. So anyway, I just think a lot of indie during the beginning of the aughts was leaning heavily into that. I remember a roommate of mine at the time commenting on that, like when we were watching like a grizzly bear, the band, not the animal, video. So fast forward to now where everything is essentially indie through the lens of like you can self-release and you know, engineer, like write, record, engineer, you know, produce, mix, master, release, all that stuff. I champion it. I'm a fan of it.
We need it.
Yeah, there still exists some of that today, and it's not good or bad. You know, that was just me being a prick at that point in time, where I'm like, you know, it doesn't sound as cool as the really like sophisticated stuff that are like whatever that means. Also,
we've all been there, man.
Yeah, and not even sophisticated, just sort of like you get stuck in your sort of your genre and your bands and all that stuff is the best that you think there is, and so therefore that's your benchmark. Like we're all full of crap when it comes to that angle.
Absolutely.
You know, right? Like that perceived bias that's in there. But anyway, what I'm finding, so there's two indie playlists on Spotify that I have utilized for the work I'm doing. And the first one is called Front Page Indie. And what's cool is it's not really pinned down to genre, and it's not necessarily any kind of cohesive thing, except that there's probably larger acts that are making a bigger impact, or just, you know, acts that are just making the bigger impact, period, and that's why they're on there. And, you know, there's like some country, which is interesting. Like you wouldn't expect that on an indie playlist, which is super cool. And I don't mean like Wilco country or like Uncle Tupelo or whatever, but just straight up country. That would be like almost like a Tay-Tay contemporary. And then there's this other one I have going called, I think it's Undercurrents, it's called.
I feel like I've listened to that one before.
Okay. So that one seems to get updated more frequently, and there is some great stuff on it. What I'm hearing, and why I even bring this up about indie, is that there is definitely like more of a musical aesthetic still with indie. Again, even though now a lot of things are kind of indie to some extent. And I'm noticing most of the standouts that like are predominantly female, whether it's just the vocalist or like the singer-songwriter, and then they have a backing band, or it's a whole band and just... the vocalist and a couple of musicians happen to be female. Like one interesting standout would be The Last Dinner Party. It's actually an all-girl band, and they have some cool tracks. And, it's echoey and it's specific rhythm section feel and sound, whether it's nodding to 80s, sort of touching goth, sort of new wave in between, maybe like the Smiths or whatever else, whatever kind of singular band or groups that have that aesthetic that they're all pulling from, The Cure, etc. Yeah. But anyway, there's that, and then there's stuff that's like a pretty accurate type of recycling, but like in a deliberate way, 90s grunge-ish kind of stuff, like maybe more like Pavement than like Soundgarden or whatever. There's this one artist, May Semones, I think is how you pronounce her name, and she may be of like mixed heritage, but like predominantly Japanese, and so she's got this one song. She's singing half in Japanese and half in English. Almost to the degree where like you don't know it's Japanese. You're like, what the hell is this? And she's jazz, and it's like two tempos, mostly unrelated sections and maybe even keys back to back, but they totally work, and it's refreshing, and it's artsy and interesting and different in the way that like if you're a real like collegiate music snob, you would really be into it, but then it also satisfies the sensibility where you're like 20 years down the line from that, and you're a little bit more open-minded, and you take more stuff at face value, but then like this is still refreshing among that because it's a little bit more complex and like layered and stuff. So anyway, I'm finding that, and then I'm trying to think if there's any like other specific kind of standouts. I think there's one song, and mind you, now that we're getting in this, I'm going to have to share a few of these references, right? But there's one as well that... I can kind of visualize the song right now. I'm trying to think of the artist and the song title, but where, it's kind of like, I was just watching a video about this on TikTok. Like it's, I think he was, musician analyzing stuff. I think he was just calling it like a loop song, but basically where, it's just essentially the same, 2 or 4 or 5 chords that are just repeating over and over. And the foreground melody, and then maybe some instrumentation outside of whatever is droning is changing the melody to the degree it's almost changing like the chord structure underneath, but the main sort of arrangement isn't changing. Yeah, and it's really like when that's done well, it's mind blowing because you're like you have to stop and like acknowledge that you're getting different sections out of one continuous loop. And you almost ignore the loop. Whereas like something like Bittersweet Symphony, it's super clear that the whole time it's just over and over again. Yeah. And it's just the vocalist that's the lead melody that's kind of presenting the variation. Because I'm pretty sure the other instrumentation isn't changed.
It's just that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I think even the drum pattern that you hear during like the verse in that song is still the same in the chorus, Yeah.
I was trying to think about the drums, and I think it is the same.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So, so there's an artist on this playlist that's doing that, where it's, this like really, it's called Pop Star, and the group is Lime Garden.
Lime Garden.
Yeah. And we'll play that. So anyway, so there's just like some refreshing kind of like challenging stuff out there that I'm hearing in the, sort of like new indie landscape, and it's refreshing. It's inspiring, and it's inspiring in the way that, gives you hope where you're like, cool, I'm hearing things I want to hear, and then I'm being given validation, not so much permission, but just like validation that like it's okay to still write quirky stuff that doesn't fit the current mold, but then it fits the current mold by not fitting the current mold, kind of thing. Writing songs like that is possible, So
yeah, I think there's the mold of pop radio, and then there's 10,000 other genres of music.
Yes,
that you can slot into, or playlists you could slot into if you go for a certain sound nowadays.
Yeah,
and the listener base is completely fractured now.
Yeah,
so you'll have these playlists that are listened to by like hundreds of thousands of people, but then like this playlist, you just named a bunch of bands I never heard of.
Yeah, and likewise, it's only I'm aware of them because of tuning into this playlist. But
yeah, exactly, and it's bittersweet. It's a bittersweet symphony out there because there is tons of great music out there and tons of great artists, and it's just harder for them to get noticed by the audience that needs to find them.
Yeah.
Because there's just too much music.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, without question. Talk about something that, is only going to become more of a problem going forward, though it's already very much an established problem.
Right. Yeah, and the problem is there's so much good music. Like you can find these great bands that you never heard of. They'll have, a whole back catalog of stuff that you can go through.
Yeah.
But it feels sometimes for me, it's hard to like get into them if no one's ever heard of them for some reason, because you can't. It's harder to share that.
Yeah.
With other people nowadays than it used to be. Like
you mean if it's just some random kind of.
Yeah, because it used to, you would hear like a new song on the radio and you're like, oh my gosh, I love that song.
Yeah.
I'm going to go buy the CD. I'm going to let my friend borrow the CD.
To some extent, even doing that, considering the place and time, you're talking CD era, and let's just say it's somewhere in the, mid to late 90s or whatever. There's not as much saturation in terms of streaming. It doesn't exist yet. And there's only... beyond anything that gets like printed onto a DVD, which is like arguably like a larger effort that takes more time, and like it doesn't kind of play in the same. It's not in the same. It's not in the same athletic field or whatever the analogy is for. A concurrent. Sequentially release music over the course of the year. Like it's either like you're in the record stores and you're grabbing it, you're listening to the radio, or you're watching MTV or Fuse or whatever all the the equivalents were at the time. So but like even though there was that saturation, which is still non-trivial, you turning your friend on to a band that like is somewhat on someone's radar, like let's say if it was early 90s and it's Sonic Youth, right? Or it's a terrible example, but like early 2000s and it's Nickelback or something, right? Like, where like there's some like, burgeoning hype and whatnot.
Even they're on TV and the radio.
They are, but like to some extent, like the word of mouth thing is still more like there's still like a cool factor. In other words, if like the cool kid in your class goes and like presents you with that CD, that's kind of like how you're getting influenced, and that makes a difference. Whereas now, like you now have streaming itself, like you have the music streaming platforms themselves that are pushing it, and it's readily available. And then people are promoting on TikTok, and Instagram, and Facebook. There's absolutely a major noise problem now that there wasn't before. And even, and again, back to the long-winded point I'm just trying to make is that when we were still trading stuff with our friends, to some extent, a very lesser-known band or a popular one had equal footing in terms of like the word of mouth that we could facilitate, about like a new album or something. And now, sure, like if someone's as virtually unknown, then it may not have the same kind of cachet to it, for sure, because you can make the argument, it's easier now, and there's all these platforms, and anyone can kind of feign like talent or or appeal or whatever.
Well, nowadays, unknown is like you have 6 million listeners on Spotify. That's
right.
unknown.
Yeah.
It's
there's
insane.
that too, for sure. Yeah.
And those bands can tour, and they'll have audiences in a lot of cities, and they'll have a crowd that knows all the lyrics. And then outside of that bubble, no one's ever heard of them. It's just a really strange time.
And also then there's people that have like 5 followers and like get lucky at some point. Let's say via the modern channels and
TikTok video.
Yeah, and then they become that. They have 3 million, or they go straight to 20 million followers or whatever. And so that's a beautiful thing. And as far as the potential that's there. So, and again, it is kind of all truly indie at this point. Like, so you almost want to say, like, what does that even mean? Because like I said, on the first playlist I mentioned, there's arguably pop, not pop oriented, but like hook oriented country stuff on there even, which is like fascinating. So it's good because it's like a meta thing where now a term that used to mean a very specific subset of the industry is now essentially what everything is. We're just kind of splitting hairs on the genres within, or if there's like label representation and stuff, obviously, like, we treat like the Chili Peppers different than we do Lil Yachty per se when he first came out. So, all right, so let me play this song Pop Star by Lime Garden. We'll work backwards, the last one I mentioned. There's just like a synth or keyboard chord refrain that goes on through the whole thing. And just try to absorb, let's say, the first 1.5 or so minutes of this in terms of any changes or lack thereof or whatever, and see if there's anything that pops out. But this song, I think it just works, period. It's got a good energy. But from a compositional point of view, like the band, some things that the rhythm section is doing, I'm like, this is fucking like a couple steps above what you normally hear. So we'll see. Here we go. Second. I think this is satirical, the auto-tune.
I've tried all my family, but no one has much to spare. So it looks like it's up to me to work until despair. I know my job. Life is short and this is long. I know my job. This life is fleeting and I'm a pop star.
It just kind of like jams out from there and fades out.
I like it. I like that
cool,
crushed
right?
8-bit synth sound in the back.
Yes,
it's cool.
Thank you. It's like, right, like that's that had been like knocking around my head, and I was like, "There's something about this is familiar." And yes, it is. It's like an 8-bit sound that they're using, which is super freaking cool.
It is cool.
But that's essentially like your pedal tone throughout the whole thing, you know, which I may be using that term slightly incorrectly, but just where there's like one constant and, you know,
it's got a really busy bass line, which I always like.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, certainly her vocals change the feel and the theme and mark the different sections. But then like the bass is doing that too. And they're like, it's busy, the bass line or the bass lines, but like, that you immediately feel like you're in different sections when the bass line changes. So it's like do 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 is all during the verse, and then which I guess is like a pre-chorus, do 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 do, and then I think it goes maybe back to the verse bass line for the chorus. Anyway, and it's like super like just rapid, busy, like almost like disco drumming kind of thing. It's just like it just
kind of has a gallop to it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's right. It's some weird kind of parallel of like a like a Ritchie Blackmore gallop or like Iron Maiden or like one of those more kind of metally kind of. So anyway, it's just like, and then there's like again like I think like a satirical, like they use that auto tune for a second.
Yeah.
They kind of.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm a pop star.
Yeah, and it's like they're like very like subdued, kind of chill vocal deliveries. Like it's nothing really, even like the vocals in the mix are not at all out front. Which, if we're splitting hairs and like what's indie still, they're not all following the exact sonic mixing conventions that other more popular music would be following right now. But cheers to Lime Garden. That's a fucking banging track.
Lime Garden.
Yeah.
I'll check them out.
Yeah. So let's see. What else can I offer up here? Oh, let me play you this, which I mentioned, this May Semones track. This one is interesting in a different way where it's jazz sneaking its way into the indie thing. And it really works. And it's when you hear it, like you don't know, again, like what language she's speaking in half of it. Like you don't really know what genre you're in. There's some great like arrangement stuff. I'm not going to say anything yet and kind of color anyone's listening perspective. Oh, here we go. Okay, it's called the track is called Inaka by May Semones. Sorry.
Bye bye, sayonara. 僕は田舎に引っ越したい。つまらない。
You're like, all right, here's where this is going.
If I'm with you, I don't care where we are. In the country, by the ocean, on a farm. Now I'd move to the middle.
It's like a little rock in here too, just.
If I'm with you, I don't care where we are.
Didn't even see that transition coming.
Yeah.
That's right, and you got that like kick that's right on the bump. Up close freaking string arrangements, so it's gorgeous,
It's hard to believe, to breathe, to eat.
You're just glad this whole track is so great. Ascension.
Blip, blip, blip. If I'm with you, I don't care where we are. In the country by the ocean on a farm.
All right,
Nice.
I want to play this whole one because it's like she just like touches rock for a second. It's great.
Yeah.
Builds up and then
I don't care where we are. If I'm with you, I don't care where we are. In the country by the ocean on a farm. And I won't move to the middle of nowhere if I'm with you. If I'm with you, I don't care where we are.
just like a great little like jazz into rock
a cool
A B
song.
A B. Yeah, you know.
I dig that a lot.
Cool, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's like a lot of really, you know, like if that's just like a sample set of what's happening right now, like count me in, you know.
Yeah.
And there was like one other specific thing in that, you know, maybe even on the which is like the those bends, like it's like, oh yeah, that's where she just like reminds you that she's like a guitar player, you know,
Right.
you know. But it's great. Like it's great. It reminds me like all those strings in there, like whose ever choice that was, all those strings in there, like up front and gentle, but like kind of like with a little oomph to them. Reminds me of like maybe like one of maybe like 4 Fiona Apple songs as far as like you know how it was integrated, because a lot of the Fiona Apple stuff, like essentially all of the John Bryan, you know, produced stuff is all like it's like really intricate and vast and stuff, but the orchestral stuff, the vocal quality, the instrumentation, let's say like the middle third of albums is all kind of very upfront, you know. It's not like boomy and reverby and stuff. There's a lot of effects, but not so much from like a creating a large space kind of feel. It's like Fiona's voice is always just like slammed up against the mic with a lot of compression and breath, and you know, there's a lot of snarl in there that like they capture from her,
Right.
which makes her like terrifying too, and I love it.
Yes.
So anyway, it's like I don't know. I guess I kind of hear a little bit of that influence in there from like a production point of view, you know.
Yeah, I thought it's an interesting one because it sounds like something you could put together in your bedroom, but in a good way.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it doesn't sound like it was professionally recorded in a studio. Maybe it was. I don't know, but
I mean, to me, the strings sound like they were. But no, yeah. I mean, it's not probably because it's not continuing again to follow, like, you know, if we're using the last song, Pop Star or Lime Garden as an example, it's not like holding to this current expectation of like the vocals have to be like this, you know. And like I think in maybe you're in my case, based on all the things we've discussed, like we do want to adhere to that for our own sort of the sake of like being competitive and there being clarity and things like that. But prior to having to change my perspective as a producer on needing to do that, I never cared about that as long as I could hear the vocals and they're sung well, and I'm not like, I can't, like, you know, I'm not consciously having to like crank something up to hear it. It was fine because, you know, it's like listen to how we've talked about this before, but listen to how buried vocals are on any number of, you know, super classic songs, anywhere from, and I'm thinking more once you get like heavier and rock, because like in the 60s and 50s it was more clear, but like you know, let's say just from by the time, you know, Kiss, Aerosmith, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, blah 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 is in existence through the 90s, especially 90s stuff, the voice is not just cascading on top of everything else. It's just part of like this whole bombastic sound, and it's there and you hear it, but it's not punching you in the face any more than the guitar is, you know. So it's just cool when you hear that, and like you as a listener and a fan are like, fuck yeah, that works, you know. And God forbid we ever take a page out of that book and try to
maybe
not
we
overthink
should
it.
just not overthink it.
Yeah,
is what I just learned from both of those songs.
Yeah, because they work, right? I mean, like it's like probably your last takeaway was, well, but if it had like this in the production, I would have liked it better. It just gems, you know.
Yeah,
and that's something I think it's like important to keep in mind as a both, like when you're both a fan first and then a musician / if you're an engineer or a producer, whatever. The stuff that you love that all exists before certain production techniques are in place just connected with you because it was good, it was performed well, and yeah, sure, it was captured well and mixed well, but the way that like this guy mixed it versus, you know, this other person would have mixed it nowadays, like it doesn't, it's, you know, you like that version and you don't care what it could have been. So
right. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, there does seem to be a lot of that on this list or this playlist. I'm sorry, and that is sort of something that would make it a little bit more like indie in quotes than just sort of the fact that everything again is kind of indie by this point in time anyway.
Right.
Yeah, there's that characteristic there for sure. So you know, kudos to whoever set up that Undercurrent playlist on Spotify.
Go listen to Undercurrent playlist on Spotify.
Undercurrents. Yeah.
Undercurrents.
Yeah.
Check out some new music from unknown people.
That's right. Yeah.
Or maybe you already know them. Maybe you're a huge fan. Yeah. Maybe you have their merch and the poster on your wall. I don't know. That's where we are.
For sure. Anyway, so I think that about covers it. You know, I just wanted to share that with you, I think, and with the audience as well. I think there's a lot of unique and creative things happening in the indie space still. And I'm glad that I got turned on to it, so hopefully that was beneficial to you, Jeremy, and the listeners at large.
Yeah, everybody stop complaining that there's no good music. There's too much.
There you
music.
go.
Go listen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. All right, well, until next time, we're going to try to come back with some songwriting-based stuff. Finally, I swear to God, we'll do it this time. If we had mentioned that already, I don't recall or not, but we're trying to do some songwriting challenges, so stay tuned for that. But just to give you a little snapshot or idea of what that means, we are a first and foremost songwriting-centric podcast, and we figured we should probably start putting our money where our mouth is and getting involved in the process and, you know, kind of working on songwriting craft in real time. So we have a couple ideas we've put forth, but the first of that being we have a songwriting challenge that we're working on where we pick certain parameters, maybe a list of 4 things, and then have to work within those parameters. And the idea is going to be that one of us starts something, the other one or both of us listens through it after it's done, then adds to it, and then we listen back to that next result and kind of ping pong that back and forth until we have a finished product. And you guys get to watch in, in cringe the whole time. So that should be fun.
Make fun of us.
Yeah. Please do.
Whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah. So anyway, all right, Jeremy, that was awesome. Let's get rested up and prepared for the next one.
Sounds good, buddy.
All right, dude.
Talk to you soon.
Yep. Have a good night.
A quick request.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. You like this video? Leave a comment down below. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll make more content like this. It helps the algorithm.
End of request.